You're listening to The Hurt Locker, the podcast that opens the door on men's mental health. And tonight's guest, we have comedian Joe McTernan. Joe, welcome to The Hurt Locker.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to have you here. Can I ask, I'm just going to dive in. You said dive in. Are you a workaholic?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think my work's probably defined the last 20 years of my life, really. I think I sort of started when I went to university. I don't think there's been a time where I haven't been constantly thinking about what the next stage of my career is. And pretty much my whole life has been thinking about how I keep, moving on with my career, really. So yeah, I work pretty much if I'm not physically working, I'm always mentally thinking about that I should be working, if that makes sense.
It does. For the benefit of the few people who don't know you, who is Joe McTernan?
Well, I am a comedian, stand-up comedian, I suppose, is my sort of main thing that I do for work, which is kind of strange because if anyone really follows me online, I don't put a lot of my stand-up up, actually. So I think most people would probably know me from doing online sketches, which is I would imagine that's why I'd be more known than my actual stand-up, even though that's what I do pretty much 75% of the week.
Okay. So are you busy at this moment in time?
Yeah, I mean, so pretty much, I'll sort of gig pretty much every weekend, and I started doing cruises recently as well, which has been...
Did you say cruises?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go on. Which places have you been going to?
Well, the one I just did there, we started in Athens and then went to Corfu, Santorini, then went to Sicily at the end. And then I think I'm starting one in 5 days where I go to, it's just all around Norway and stuff. So obviously wildly different weather, I can imagine. But yeah, I've been doing cruises now for about a year, which is something I never really planned on doing, to be honest. But it kind of just sort of, someone came and seen me at the Fringe. And then I sort of said, if you want to come along and do some of these, and I've sort of just started doing them quite a bit. And yeah, they're good fun. I quite like them. It's a different kind of stand-up because obviously no one's really there to see you as such. It's more like you're just part of the sort of adventure for them. So it's quite a different vibe, because usually we stand up, you're kind of doing it in a club which is called the stand-up comedy club, so everybody knows what they're there for. Whereas the cruises can be quite fun because you're just kind of going up and you're just sort of going, hey, do you want to watch me for 45 minutes? And probably no one knows who you are.
How does that work though? Say, for example, you don't have a good gig that evening. And then they see you in the bar and there's no one else to go because you're on the ship with them.
That's it. I mean, it's kind of interesting because in a weird way, if you kind of do really well on a gig, everybody kind of wants to talk to you and stuff, which is lovely, and that's a nicer vibe than. But I tend to, be cap on, sunglasses. I look suspicious at the buffet counter, like some celebrity trying to avoid the press. Because, but yeah, it can happen, and it's a really because usually if you do a gig, I never have once seen a comedian have a bad gig and want to hang around after it. Like, as soon as you have a bad gig, you're pretty much getting your jacket on and making your excuses and leaving, really, because you don't really want to be around that. I mean, thankfully, that happens a lot more when you begin. As you get on in life, obviously it's a little bit it happens less.
Of course,
it still happens. It still happens.
Okay. So I asked you at the get-go, are you a workaholic and that? You've been doing stand-up comedy now for 20 years.
Well, I've been doing stand-up. I've been doing stand-up about 11 years now.
11 years, okay.
The 9 years before it, I started off, I did film at uni, and then we had a little film production company, where we filmed stand-up shows, and that's where I got the kind of idea that, maybe I should give this a bash, because I used to always edit them. I used to always edit comedians, and I never, not like I was sitting going, I could do better than this, but it was definitely I'm
sure you did. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did.
But there's oh god, I think you need a bit of an ego to start in comedy for sure. But I think, you know, even if it's foolishly so. But yeah, no, I sort of watched stand-ups, fancied giving it a bash myself. Never thought I would really. I've never been one of those. I'd like to be one of those comedians that would say, oh, I was always the funny one at school, and you know, it was always on the cards for me. But I didn't really feel like that, to be honest. I kind of feel like I fell into it, and it just sort of, it really fit me well when I did it. I was a bit lost at the time when I started stand up actually, and it kind of saved me a little bit because I didn't know what to do with myself, you know.
How do you mean lost? What, you graduated from uni and
yeah, I think there's a horrible sort of thing that can happen because I came from a really working class background, and I think when you then decide to do something that would be deemed as quite out there and different, so filming for me was like, you know, quite a different thing to do from where I was from. And I think there's maybe a slight element that you think that because you're deciding to be something different, then it'll work out or something, you know, because you hear all these stories of, you know, actors saying that they were from working class backgrounds and, you know, they made it and stuff. And I don't think what's talked about a lot enough is that, you know, there's lots of people from different working class backgrounds that do start in a creative industry and they don't have that story, you know, even though they try really hard to get there still. And I kind of feel like I was sort of feeling like that. I feel like I was really trying to push myself into filmmaking as such. And I did acting as well. I sort of tried to do a bit of acting. Because I didn't study acting, I found that really hard to get anywhere. I felt like that anybody, and I used to be, I think better than I am now. I used to email without thinking and, you know, put myself out for stuff that I was probably, you know, wildly not right or ready for. But I would have that kind of sense of, you know, I don't know, optimism about stuff a little bit more when I was younger, maybe. And then, yeah, I sort of doing that. That wasn't quite working out. I was feeling so lost on where to go because I felt like I was going to have to give up this creative side of me, which had basically been my personality pretty much for the 6 years before it. And I found that really hard. But the end stand up, I did a gig. It went well enough in my brain that I thought, yeah, and I felt sick before I did it, but I pretty much enjoyed it. And then I just didn't stop, to be honest. And sometimes I do wonder, I find it quite funny sometimes that even now when I go on stage, specifically at slightly bigger gigs or bigger audiences, I sort of feel a sense of being a bit of an imposter, I suppose, sometimes, because it wasn't really something that I had this big plan to do in a way. So, yeah. So that's kind of what I mean by that, I suppose, is that, you know, this is my life and I make my living from this now. And I'm not 100% sure how it really happened, to be honest.
I hear you. You've come on the Hurt Locker to talk about mental health and that. So let's dive in. What's in your Hurt Locker?
I suppose the biggest thing I always find. So I had bad depression for a long time in my life, and I'm weirdly not as bad, I think, and I don't know what that means when I say that I'm not as bad, because I don't think depression's a thing that completely ever leaves you. But there was a big period in my life where I was really, really depressed, and I didn't really tell anybody about it, even people close to me and stuff.
How old were you?
So I would say, because I always had the funny thing is I don't really know when it started, because I always felt, I think, of lack of a better word, cynical of the world growing up, I suppose. I didn't really see the humor and stuff as much as other people. Because when I think, my dad reckons it's this, because I lost my mum incredibly young. I think my mum was, I was 11 weeks old when my mum died, and she was 27. Wow. And I suppose there's always been a part of that that's been missing from me. And I've always kind of felt that kind of thing of like that kind of gap in me from not having my mum, I suppose. And then, yeah, I was always really cynical as a child, apparently. I was like, my dad used to describe me as not being as fun as my brother. Like he said, you know, he used to try and have a laugh with my brother, and he would do it with me, but I'd be sitting quite, you know, just unreactive. And I suppose that it did. I sort of feel like then I had a little bit of a coming out my shell when I got to university. I think my family were surprised that I went to uni to do film, because they just didn't think, I just seemed like I wouldn't do anything like that. And it's even more surprising to them now that I'm a stand-up. And I don't really know what happened, but there was a big period, I suppose, between maybe like 20, 24, 20, or maybe even a bit younger, 23 to maybe 28, where I was for 5 years, just, I would say, looking back now, really badly depressed, but didn't really do anything about it and just kind of lived with it for that amount of time.
How did it manifest? How did it show itself then on a day-to-day basis?
I would, there was times where I would not get out. I mean, I used to have a previous partner that I was with, and, you know, she could go to work and I would get up and act like I was going to do the day, and I would go straight back to bed and pretty much not be able to leave it. And then I would try and, you know, get myself up and act like I hadn't been doing that, and try to sort of lie that I'd not been doing that. So that was a big part of it for me, was just being unable to actually commit to doing anything, and not wanting to, like, not even, well, I say no, I think it's not even a choice really, I suppose. It was just a sort of, at the time, crippling inability to sort of find any worth in doing anything, I suppose. So that was when it was its worst. And see, when I went, it's funny now, because when I think back, you know, I go, the way I feel now, I would do something about that now. So I, you know, in my head, because I feel, I suppose, somewhat, well, of course, better in life, but I don't know, when I look back to that period, it does feel very, I feel like I've sort of removed a lot of it from my head. I don't really remember it, but I remember it as a sort of, I do know that it happened, but I think you kind of block it out, don't you, a little bit, and you sort of move on from it. So yeah, that was probably the worst of it, when I was depressed. And it's kind of funny, because I think, you know, it's not like, I mean, it's not like I don't get depressed now, but I feel now it's like I understand it a lot more. Whereas I mean, because I think one of the best things I've ever heard and helped me was, I don't know if you've seen Stephen Fry talking about depression, and the idea that he describes it as that it's raining, and that's the first thing to accept, that it's raining, and the second thing to do is that you can't do anything about it, and then the third thing is that it'll pass. And I always remember that being an incredibly, like, amazing thing for me to hear. You know, when you just sort of hear something encapsulated in a way that you go, yeah, that's what I needed to hear. So I think now, if I ever get depressed, I have got better at going, this is just a thing. This is like, I've basically, you know, if I hurt myself, if I, you know, sprained my ankle, that's how I look at it when I get depressed now. I think I just kind of go, this will pass. Ignore anything that's, you know, getting you down, I suppose, and then, you know, just hope that it'll pass. And it does now, and that's the funny thing. And I don't know if it's a thing about life experience or just life being better. I suppose I'm so happy in my life now. I don't know if that's a helpful thing.
It's interesting you saying I'm so happy in my life now, and I was already thinking, when was the last time you cried?
When was the last time I cried? I would say I'm quite an emotional. I literally saw Les Miserables last night and cried my eyes out.
I've never watched it, so.
Well, it's funny, because my girlfriend, she did musical theatre and is an actor, and she loves musical theatre, and I hadn't watched much of it, and she loves it, and so we always go to see stuff, and I got really into it. But I got really emotional watching just a guy, you know, it's like seeing someone singing their guts up. For some reason, it's really emotional. So yeah, I suppose I cried last night, but in the sense of actual crying, like, about something, was I actually think the last time I did was probably when my granddad died, which was when I actually think I actually proper cried, was probably that 3 years ago.
How long ago was that?
About 3 or 4, was it? I can't remember exactly. It's 3 or 4 years ago now. But my gran and granddad were like my mum and dad. They sort of brought me up. So my dad brought me up, but my gran and granddad were my mum's mum and dad. So they were really, really involved in my life. And I always used to see my gran as my mum and my granddad as my dad. So yeah, that was probably the last thing. So I lost my gran, and then I think it was about a year and a half later I lost my granddad. And that was the last time I really, really cried, I suppose.
Going through your depression, you said when it was at its worst, lasted for about 5 years. Were you ever suicidal?
See, I think when I think about it, I think sort of mentally, I was. I remember always planning things in my head and all that, I suppose. But I never really got to the point of physically doing anything about it. So I don't know if that's just a part of maybe, you know, the way you feel. I mean, I suppose it's not healthy anyway that you're feeling like that or thinking things like that. But yeah, there was definitely an element of it. I mean, as I say, it's always strange talking about it now because that seems like a very different person, which seems quite alien to me now. But I definitely remember feeling that worthless at times and things like that, you know. But it's which is interesting because he does seem like a sort of stranger now, really. But yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Did you reach out for support during that period?
Never. That was the weird thing. I never once ever did anything about it. Ever. I wish I had. I sort of look back now and I go, I wish I had, because there was a lot of times where, you know, it would have been easier to maybe have talked about it more and stuff. But I never reached out. Never.
Why do you think that was?
I don't know really. I think I've always been a bit like that. Maybe I'm sort of like I'd rather not sort of, you know, I don't know, talk about stuff to people. I don't know. I just always used to feel like, I suppose if I was ever feeling depressed, one of my main things to do would be, if I was out publicly, is to act like I wasn't, and that was kind of part of it. So then, you know, you'd have a
Put the
drink
mask
or
on.
anything, put the mask on, and then that would be, I suppose, when I look back, enough at the time. That was a kind of like, now it's, you see, it's just a plaster really, but it's, you know, at the time, I suppose that's just kind of what gets you through it really. But yeah, I wish I had asked for a bit of help at the time. It's kind of interesting talking about it now, actually, because in a weird way, if I couldn't have talked about this a few years ago, I probably would have been sitting lying to you and saying, no, I never had it. But there's part of me now that, you know, it doesn't mind talking about it because it seems like something I've passed really. And I find it quite, I don't know, quite liberating really to sort of be able to talk about being like that and feeling fine now, you know.
Do you think it's a male thing that we don't talk about how we're feeling?
I
or
think
is this a societal thing?
I think certainly. I mean, I certainly remember it feeling like that. Like none of my male family members really that I was close, like in close quarters with, were emotional people, I would say. I think my dad, I love him, but he was very, you know, very blokey dude. You know, I mean, didn't really talk much about his feelings. My granddad wasn't really an emotional guy at all. I was very close to my gran, but again, she wasn't really emotional either. She was quite a stern woman. Loved her dearly. She was an amazing woman, but I think she was very, unemotional. So we didn't really talk about stuff like, it was never really a thing. Because I see, you know, you see it these days, and you kind of see that, you know, families talking about that, like saying, "Oh, please, you know, I hope you would tell me if something was wrong." I don't even think that sentence was probably ever uttered in my family, but not. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing. It was just, I think it's funny. I sometimes think now that it's like, it looks like it was like the 70s when it was like this. But, you know, I grew up in the 90s and it was still very much like that. I don't think it was this, you know, open sort of emotional thing that you did with your family to talk about your feelings, even in the 90s. I don't think that was a thing. Not to me anyway. But
do you think it was a Scottish thing?
Oh yeah.
And the reason why I mention that is because the high incidences of suicide and mental health in Scotland, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Scottish, I mean, one of our best traits probably is that we keep a grudge and you know, we're quite stern, sort of, you know, keep it inside and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there might be an element to that as well. I've never really thought about it like that, but I suppose there definitely could be. But yeah, interesting.
So tell me then, your mum sadly passes away when you're 11 weeks old. What was life like for you growing up? Is your brother older than you?
Yeah, by 2 years. He's 2 years older. Yeah, weird, I suppose, is the best way to describe it, because I mean, I always used to say it was funny because in a weird way, I don't really have anybody to miss specifically with my mum because I didn't know her. You know, I was 11 weeks. I've no idea. I've obviously got stories and stuff that people tell me about her, and I knew from my grandparents every element of her life, and you know, that was one thing. If I ever wanted to talk about her, that was fine. You know, but I suppose if I always used to think if my mum had passed when I was, you know, 8 or 9, I don't know how that would have differed at losing my mum at that age, because then you've obviously got experience of life with them. So for me, it was really just a reality, really, that I just didn't have my mum. But obviously at school, there was a lot of that kind of, you know what kids are like. There was all this kind of, if it ever went to any sort of slagging you off, it was, oh, your mum's dead and all this kind of stuff. And it was just kind of part of it. But yeah, what I felt like it was that there was a lot of remorse, I suppose, from other people, when, especially if you met my mum's friends.
Unpick that for me, remorse.
Well, I suppose it was this kind of people feeling sorry for you. I mean, it doesn't happen. I mean, I could say now at this age, you see your mum passes, and it's kind of, I suppose, an acceptable thing to say, really, because I'm not
your time of life, etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly. It could, and they don't know how old my mum could have been. 70. That's. I mean, mum could be 80 at this age. I'm 34. Like, easily could have had me later. So nobody would question that. They would say, "Oh, that I'm sorry to hear that." But when I think you're a kid, it's like, it seems like such a wow moment to say, like, at the age of 7, that you've not got a mum. So people would be quite, I suppose, feel sorry for you. The biggest thing you used to get is that people that knew my mum would then tell you a story and tell you how amazing they were and amazing
how did
she
that
was.
feel?
Me and my brother didn't ever, like, it was a funny thing, because you go, I get why people do it, but at the same time it always used to make you feel a little bit worse in a weird way, because you didn't have that experience with them. And which sounds quite horrible to say, because I would appreciate anybody telling me anything about my mum, but it did always feel a little bit of a painful thing, really, because I didn't really have that experience with her. So they were kind of, I get why people do it, but then it's at the same time, that's how it feels. But yeah, so yeah, it was a weird reality, is what I describe it as. It doesn't really, I don't have the comparison really to see what it would be like otherwise. So, but for me, it was just, that's what life was. As I said before, I've always felt like something missing. That's one thing I've always had, is I've always felt like I had a massive gaping part of my life that wasn't there, inside and out, probably. But yeah, even at this age, it's kind of interesting. It's always.
How have you tried to fill that void?
I suppose. I mean, I've always been, really. I don't really like being, say, for example, like, single. I've never really. That's not been my thing. Like, I've always enjoyed being in relationships and things like that. And I really, I think that's maybe a big way that you sort of.
Is that a comforter?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I'm like, my partner now is just the best human I've ever met in my life. And it's just like a really, you can feel, I think I was always desperately looking for someone that was, I suppose, maybe just like as amazing as my mum was described, you know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing, I suppose. So there's maybe that element. What else, really? I don't know. I mean, I suppose there must be an element to that that's affected the way that my life is. I've always been dreadfully just convinced that, when I wanted to be this actor, I wanted to be doing all these massive creative things, and had these dreams, and that's what I was going to do. I was going to escape this and go and do that instead, and all this kind of stuff. So that was a big driving force in me. As I say, weirdly, as you sort of start to achieve it, and you start finding the other things in life that you enjoy, that sort of dissipates slightly. I suppose everybody in my career has got a drive, but I'd certainly say mine's has slightly slowed down. I don't think I'm as sort of, that's all or nothing as I used to be. Yeah.
What about your relationship with your brother? What's that?
I've got a lovely relationship with him. Yeah, certainly as we've gotten older, yeah, for sure. Like, we're just really tight. We call each other all the time, Yeah, my brother's always been a really constant force in my life, really. I think we went through a lot together, so we've always just kind of been, yeah, pretty tight, which is good.
And what's your dad made of your career thus far?
So proud. Yeah, he loves it. I think he loves it, really. He's he comes to all my shows and, all that kind of stuff. I think the funny thing is just, I think as things go on in life, it's an interesting feeling, but I think we had a lot of stuff to deal with growing up, but now we're out of it. We sort of, I think there's just a thing of time passing, and there's just a little bit more joy, and sort of, I don't know. Like, yeah, my dad, yeah, he just enjoys it. I think he just likes what I do. I know he talks about it to other people and stuff, you know, and he's always kind of going on about it, which is nice.
So you're a trophy son now, then?
I think so. Yeah, so, which is lovely. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I know he's like that. So that's cool. But yeah, we're all quite good now. Really.
Tell me to mind my own business, but I'm just curious here. Did he ever think about getting married again? Maybe having.
I don't know. I would. Yeah, I kind of wouldn't answer that on his behalf, if I'm honest, because I think that's his own sort of thing, I suppose. That I wouldn't really touch on too much, to be honest.
That's not a problem. Where should we go then? I'm led by you. This is the Hurt Locker.
Where else could we go? Suppose, well, weirdly, the element of what I do on social media is probably quite a good. I don't know if you've talked about that much, about the idea of consistently posting in life and trying that becoming your personality, and that being quite. I suppose that's been.
Okay, well, link to that. Tell me about talking about mental health. Why is it important to you?
I just think that we still live in a time and a world where it really isn't talked about still enough. I don't think it ever really will be, but I genuinely believe until we get to the point that, you know, as I say, a sprained ankle is seen the same as having bad mental health, I just really don't think we'll ever be out of the woods with it, really. But I also like talk, because not everybody wants to talk about it. I feel comfortable talking about it. I like, you know, in my videos online, I love doing videos about it. I think, and it's been amazing for me to see the response to that. I remember the first time I ever did a sort of mental health video online, I felt really embarrassed about it. And, you know, because you feel like you're
pause. Why embarrassed?
Well, I think it's because it's revealing. I mean, it was the first time you're sort of revealing something about yourself, really. And it's sort of, and again, I think it probably does stem back to that thing you were saying that you go, you feel a bit, should I be talking about this? What are people going to think? I've always used to be so ridiculously concerned with what other people thought all the time. And it's such a ridiculous, horrible thing to have in anyone's brain. And I'm so glad I've sort of started to snap out of that in life, because no one really cares as much as you think they do, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, I think I was, and also, yeah, I was talking about something, because I think the first one I did was anxiety. So I was talking about my depression, but I suppose the thing that definitely defines me consistently, I think no one would disagree that knows me, as I'm a very anxious person. And I think the first video I ever did was a anxiety video, and the response to it was unbelievable to me. Like, it was just so many people saying, "Oh my God, you know, this is exactly my brain," you know, like, and people saying, "Oh, get out of my brain. How did you get in here?" and stuff. And that was really a lovely thing for me, because it was just, you know, nice in a weird way that people were. I suppose the other reason, because the other reason going back there is why I was worried, is you don't want to seem like you're taking the mickey out of it as well, which is what's hard when you do comedy, I suppose, with mental health stuff, is that you don't want to seem like you're just having a stab at it or saying that this is foolish. But I still think it's something that people go through and can laugh at and relate to, because they've went through that as well. Just because it is sometimes a really serious thing doesn't mean, I suppose, we can't sort of connectively sort of recognize the humor in some elements of it.
100%. And I think also, sorry to cut across you, but I think also as well,
no,
it makes people realize that they're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's definitely what I've seen from doing it. It's a weird thing I would never sort of say myself, because I never felt like some sort of, you know, martyr going on and being the guy to talk about this and everyone else connecting. But it's so nice to see that that's how people feel when you do something like that. And it's a really lovely, for me, it was beautiful, really, to see that, because I went from being embarrassed and nervous to putting something out to just being absolutely overwhelmed with how many people connected to it and thought it was funny. And even sometimes there was people in the comments that would say, "This is not, you know, this should not be joked about," kind of thing. And then, but there'd be a sea of people that would, you know, not in a, Yeah, and respond, but not in a sort of aggressive way. This is the other thing, I know, because obviously online can be so aggressive when people disagree with other people. But even when the mental health stuff, I felt they were really kind of calmly disagreeing, which was also nice to see. They weren't going, "Oh, shut up," you know. It was kind of going, "Well, like, I think we all look at stuff differently," you know, and that was really nice to see. So yeah, that was really lovely. I enjoyed being able. I did quite a few more. I don't do as many as I did, but anymore. But
how come?
You know, genuinely, this is such a terrible thing because you're always looking. I think online now and being someone on social media and consistently being creative, and you're kind of trying to reinvent what you're doing a lot, or it gets stale, and you know. And it's such a disgusting part of it, really, that you just you feel like you have to do that. But I kind of felt like I'd sort of done that. I feel like I'd said enough about it, and I thought, oh, it was time to maybe do other stuff. But then saying that, I've got other ideas now since that I'd like to do again, so they might come back round. So sometimes things I think you just take a bit of time off, maybe, and then you sort of, because I didn't ever want it just to be like, I'm the mental health guy, you know, and that's like everything I'm going to do is going to be about that, because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't completely, you know, show just who I am. It's one element of me, but not the whole package, I suppose.
So tell me, gig-wise, where are you?
So
you said you're doing cruises.
Doing what cruises. Else? It's hard to say that without coming across as a bit of doing cruises. Doing cruises. Got the Fringe coming up. Always the big thing. Big Christmas. The Christmas for comedians, as I call it.
Do you enjoy it?
Love it. I love it. I always convince myself at the end of every Fringe that I'll never do it again. And then by the time it comes round, I can't wait to go again. Which is so funny. Every time.
What's the pull for you?
Well, one, I live there in Edinburgh, and I think I would find it impossible to live there while the Fringe was going on now and I wasn't doing something. I think I'd find it. I'd need to move away for a month. I just would have to, because I don't think I could stomach it if I was there. But also, it's just, I think, for me, it's just gigging. It reminds you why you enjoy stand-up, I think, because you do so many weird, different gigs. You're surrounded by different amazing comedians and creative people, and it can be so fun. For me, the biggest thing now is that me and my partner, Abby, we perform together now at the Fringe, which has been a huge sort of electric bolt of excitement for us again, I suppose, because I had done a few shows by myself and we did it last year together, and it was so much fun. And I think because she lives in London, I live here, we both do. She does cruises as well. I do cruises. Sometimes we don't see each other for like a month, and you know, doing the Fringe, we get a solid month together, which is just not always, you know, possible. So that's nice. So we're doing that again this year, which is great, and we're really excited to do that.
And then after the Fringe, what then?
So after the Fringe, that's the big question, which is often the problem, is that you put everything into August in Edinburgh and then you don't know what to do after. I've got more cruises at the end of the year. I know that much, I think. And then, I don't really know. I sort of feel like I've had to accept this now. I used to really panic about my diary and what was coming up. And I used to really panic. Whereas I'm sort of starting to learn that the comedy gods
will
kind of work it out. They'll work it out for you. It does. Every time I think, oh God, what am I going to get the rent paid? And something always happens. It just, I mean, it's maybe a bad way to live, but I kind of feel like that's the way. Like I can't just sit and, you know, have a pot noodle and wait for it to happen. But it's like, you know, I got to put the feelers out and stuff. But life seems to keep going, which is cool, you know.
I'm just going to go back. You spoke about relationships. And I'm wondering, what does love mean to you?
What does love mean? I think someone completely understanding who you are without questioning it at every point, you know, not seeing it as a thing to change, is just kind of accepting what your little foibles are in life and who you are, and just either liking it and loving it or dealing with it and not saying anything to you, and just kind of existing in a space with someone without constantly feeling that it's that anything's, how am I saying this? It's like, I always feel like never thinking that even if you're having an off day, that it's anything to do with this knowing it's nothing to do with them as well. That's a big one for me. It's never feeling like, just like accepting every part of you and just going, oh, it's just, if I'm having a down day, it's a down day. That's fine. That's cool. We'll get through it. And I think that for me has always been the thing I was looking for in life, and definitely what I have with Abby now. Just absolute, just like, we just love each other for every part of ourselves, and it's just like the nicest feeling, I think, to have that, you know. And
when did you know you loved her?
I knew really quickly. It was so strange. We met very, very randomly at a comedy club. We had never heard of each other, even though we were both comedians, because that does happen. You don't always know who everybody is. And we always say this, it was so funny, like, we don't remember a point of ever going, so what are we doing? Is this a thing? We just met, decided to meet up again, and just that forever since it's been it. And it's just, yeah, it's, I loved Abs after, if I'm being honest, like a weekend, I think. Dare I say love at first sight, but, you know, it's that kind of thing. I just kind of knew straight away, which was lovely, you know.
Does it allow you to feel vulnerable?
Oh, absolutely.
And do you feel comfortable with that vulnerability?
Absolutely. I think that's the thing. I think if anything, that's why you're more in love with somebody, is, as I say, because I've definitely been my weird self, and, you know, and it's never really been seen as anything other than, like, it's never been seen as weird or anything. Like, because you sort of convince yourself. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I touched the mic. I think you convince yourself sometimes that something might be weird, or like, should have I reacted like that, or is that strange? And then when you get with the right person, it's just not. It's just, they just love you for who you are, and they're like, that's funny, or, you know. But yeah.
I'll ask you. You can only pick one person. Who's the most important person in your life?
I mean, Abby, for sure, is just as the first person. I mean, she's absolutely my main priority and everything in life. It's a hard question, because the thing is, I always feel like I ask for one, because at different stages of my life, you know, my gran was the most important person to me when I was growing up, and still is. You know, she defined who I was. She was one of the most amazing humans ever. And, you know, even though she's passed now, she's obviously still part of me on that. I suppose, even in a weird way, as I was saying, my mum as well, even though I never knew her, was such an important person to me as well, because it's just like, she's part of my sort of, I don't know, my sort of story, as it were. But right now, Abby. And she's,
what if I said,
she's in the other room.
Say it louder. Say it louder. What if I said you were wrong? What if I said the most important person in your life is you?
Well, that's I never even thought of that, to be honest. That's an interesting point, isn't it? That might seem a bit egotistical, though.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No, I know. No, yeah. I suppose in the sense that, yeah. You are really, I suppose, aren't you? I always think, yeah.
It feels to me, Joe, talking to you, that you've gone on this voyage of discovery of self. You know, you've really explored you.
Yeah.
That you feel a lot more comfortable in your own self.
Definitely. Yeah. More than ever, I would say.
More than ever. More than ever. And again, you can share with me if you'd like to, but if friends were ever struggling with their mental health, would you feel comfortable talking to them? Would you feel comfortable asking what's going on?
More than most people, I would say that they would know. Like I would, well, not more than most. I wouldn't want to make it a competition, but I would be the first in line to talk to anyone about it, because it's not hard for me to listen to that and sort of, you know, I was going to say understand, but that's not really the case sometimes, because you might not understand, but at least, you know, recognize that somebody needs to talk about something like that and it not be at all alien to me, I suppose.
Have you had to?
Do you know, I not really to a sort of, you would think you maybe would, but I don't really feel. I've known people that I feel are struggling, and then you kind of want to ask them if they're okay, and you do, and then they sort of, you can only go as far to hear their answer as being fine.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not our job to keep going, I suppose. So it's definitely been a couple of times like that, but yeah, I've never really had anyone really sit me down, I think, and say, I need to talk about this, which is, as I always think, a peculiar thing in life, really. But then again, I think that's what it stems back to. You know, when I was like this, maybe that was one of the reasons that you don't talk, because it does seem like such a strange scenario, doesn't it, really, that someone would come in and be as honest to just say that they're feeling a certain way. Like, I just don't know. Sometimes I feel like, I don't know if we live in a world where that's so like, I don't know, accessible still to people, even though it is. It's so funny because you just asked me there, and I would hope that everyone would know that about me, that I'd be like, yeah, you know, let's talk. But I don't know if everybody knows that.
Would you like children in the future?
Yeah, and I didn't before.
What's changed?
I don't know. I feel several things. Me, I've changed. Yeah, definitely. I'm with someone who I can definitely see that being a thing with, for sure. You know, I used to not want kids at all. Like, really didn't want kids.
Can I ask why? Previously,
I just, you know what, I really don't know. It was such a, I mean, maybe it'd be easy. I mean, I definitely know I didn't enjoy my childhood, I would suppose, so much when I look back. So I wondered, maybe there'd be a part of that going, do I really feel, I didn't ever feel like I would get to a point that I would want to be in that role of a dad, I suppose. But yeah, now I can see it for sure. You know,
it's funny because I asked you earlier on about your childhood and that, and you kind of swerved that one. But now you say about your childhood in terms of maybe not being as happy looking back.
Yeah, I don't think I was really. I think I had definitely happy moments. I mean, my grandparents were a big part of the happiness in my life, and when I was with them, and I definitely had happy moments when I was with them. But generally speaking, I was desperate not to be a child anymore. I remember that being the thing. I was desperate not to be. I used to always feel like I was a lot sort of mentally somewhere else than a lot of younger people. Like, I just didn't understand why a lot of people were obsessed with the things they were obsessed with when they were kids. I used to always feel like, I can't wait to get out of this. I can't wait to be taken seriously, was a big thing for me. Because I think as a kid, I just didn't really.
Do you think you grew up too quickly?
Do you know, I sometimes think that weirdly, on the contrary, I think I didn't grow up enough. And I think that's what was funny, is I think I skipped a big part and then went straight to sort of growing up quick. And as I say, being serious as a child and stuff. And then I do feel like as I've came on in life, like, it's weird sitting talking like this because you probably wouldn't think that I was, but I'm such a I'm such a silly, happy person now. Like I'm not. It's so weird, like that I'm like that, because I suppose sometimes verging on kid, being like a big kid sometimes, and I think sometimes I do wonder if it was maybe missed time, and as I've got on in life, I've felt like that's came back. So in a weird way, maybe I didn't get the chance to sort of be a kid as much as I would have liked, maybe. When I think back now, there's I don't think I had a sort of, I'd hate to it's not like my dad and stuff didn't, try to bring us up well or anything, but it was, I just didn't feel, I suppose, sort of content as a kid. That's so funny, actually. I'd never really thought about that really until now, but that's kind of a weird thing that
it was just how you phrase something about now, and I'm wondering, do you play more?
Do I play more? Definitely. Like the stuff that I do now, like it was so strange. Like a silly example of this, but I'd never been on a roller coaster in my entire life. Yeah, never been on a roller coaster, and we went to Disneyland Paris for the first time in my life, which was a joyous experience. And I was initially scared still to go on them, and then my partner kind of got me G'd up to go do it. And I mean, I had the best day of our life. It was great. And I was just, I feel like I'm definitely more open to doing stuff that I never used to, and trying to live life a little bit more. Because I definitely didn't used to. I think I was very much an inside person all the time. Never like going out very like playing. Or I used to hate it. I used to remember that when I was a kid, when you used to go out and play. I used to, no. So I didn't enjoy it. I would rather be sat in my house. I used to make little animations when I was a kid out of Play-Doh. Yeah, so sit in my room and do that every day rather than go outside.
Yeah. Talking about fatherhood,
and
we spoke off air about what's been going on in the UK and there. Does it concern you bringing a child into this world? Do you have any apprehensions?
Of course, of course. I think the thing is, though, I've came to the sort of, I was reading this book recently, and it was all about the sort of philosophies of life and stuff, and it's been one of the sort of most interesting things I've read. And one of the biggest things about that's in that I read was this whole idea that, if you look for the bad, then you'll find it. And if you look for the good, then you'll find it. And I feel like that's how I live my life now. So yeah, it is a scary place to bring kids into, but then it's also a beautiful place. And then it's the way that I suppose 100%. you what experiences you can bring. Obviously bad things are unavoidable, but I always think, like, not to compare what's going on in the UK to anything I've went through, but anything that the bad stuff that happened to me in life, I would say, is defined who I am. And I think I think I'm quite glad I had a lot of that growing up, because I do think I appreciate the little things more in life now. I really do. I think I really like. I remember there was even last night when I was saying we were watching that in Les Miserables, and it was just a moment when you never have this kind of moment when you just kind of, it just like life does seem to stop a little bit, and I was just so content and happy with what was happening. I was next to my girlfriend, and we were just sort of just like, looked at her and we were just having a laugh and just enjoying the whole thing. And it was such a nice moment. I thought, I'm glad I can do that, but then I have had times, I suppose, certainly when you're depressed, or when I was depressed, you look for everything bad, you look for all of it.
Of course.
And you find it. And that's what makes it worse, because you find it.
Yes.
And then you start convincing yourself that that's what the world is. But then I think if for me now, if you look good stuff, you find that as well,
100%.
I believe.
I was going to ask your social media content, would it prevent you from getting into the States?
How do you mean?
In terms of that 5 year that they always want to look at, the border control. Is there anything that would stop you from getting into America?
I wouldn't have thought so, unless you know something I don't.
I know nothing. I know nothing.
I don't think so. I think I'm all right. I think so. I sort of don't really. I'm quite careful with what I say online, if I'm honest. More so than I am in my stand-up, probably. I think I'm more careful with what I say. I don't think I've said anything about the president.
Okay. We won't say anything here about it.
Yeah, just keep that to yourself.
On a more important note, America related, how was Scotland going to do?
What, in the World Cup?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope. Are you
really remotely interested?
I'll be honest. I'm the worst person you can speak to about football. I have genuinely never had much of a connection to football in any way at all. I'm more snooker.
Are you?
I'd be more snooker, I'd say, than football. Yeah.
I don't know.
Scotland did pretty well in that.
Pardon? Scotland did very well in that, yeah. But maybe there's a psychology in that in terms of the pursuits of individual perfection. That's what you do rather than being part of a team.
Maybe.
That's always been your motivation.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I definitely remember feeling more comfortable when I started doing social media videos because I liked having the control over what I was doing and how I could write it and stuff. But I don't think that was maybe necessarily because I thought I knew better. I just think, sometimes when I think back to working with other people, maybe I do find it difficult to. I love to see if someone else has written something. When I used to do acting and stuff, somebody else has written something. I used to just, if I was playing a character, yeah, cool, I'll do your work and it's fun, and I can do that. I think if I was in a collaborative thing with someone, maybe I'd find that difficult sometimes because, I found it hard to, I don't know. It makes me sound like a control freak, but it's not really. It's just.
Well, what's come to mind? Tom Hardy.
Oh,
Tom Hardy's, yeah, because he's been sacked now, hasn't he, of Moblands. But that's
I saw that. Is that genuine? Is that a true thing? He said he got sacked, which I thought was interesting wordplay because I don't think you can really fire Tom Hardy. Like I'm pretty sure I'm sure Bane will be okay about that.
Yeah, we shall see. How's it been on the Hurt Locker?
It's been really interesting. Do you know what? It's one of those things. I mean, I tend not to do a lot of this kind of stuff, and I usually, I'll be honest, pull out of podcasts and things. I've sort of, if I've ever been at, not that I'm getting offers every day, but I just I tend to find it. It's not really something that I enjoy doing, really, if I'm honest. Usually, but I don't mind if I'm just talking, myself and stuff. I think if I'm ever having to do something as a comedian, it's different, because you can you're sort of playing a character, I suppose. Yeah. But no, it's been interesting. Yeah, I didn't really know what we were going to talk about, which I thought was fun.
Who does?
But that's a good way of doing it, I think, because sometimes you do these things and you sort of get a list of, this is what we're going to ask you, and then maybe then I could have came up with these amazing clippable moments that you could have used rather than me slaving on for 10 minutes trying to work out what I'm saying.
Got one final question. Have you eaten tonight?
I haven't, but I know I've got a lovely rotisserie chicken and salad to have that we bought earlier on from. There's a corner shop that does this rotisserie chicken, and I'm lovely. It's there. It's waiting.
It's waiting for you
in all its glory.
Indeed. So after that rotisserie chicken and salad, are you going to snuggle up to Abby and watch a film, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's the plan because we're up early in the morning because I'm gigging in Manchester this weekend, so I've got to get on the train, go do that. So yeah, we're going to have we will do probably. Watch a bit of TV, go to bed. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice. So you're snuggling up to Abby, and there's a knock at the door.
Mm.
And it's 12-year-old you.
Mm.
When you open the door, what do you say to him?
Get a haircut would be the first thing, because I don't know what the hell I was doing at 12 with my hair.
It wasn't a mullet, was it?
It wasn't a mullet, but I did the emo thing.
Oh, okay.
The emo
okay.
hair.
Okay.
So I would say that. But also, it gets better, I think I would say. It gets better, probably. Yeah, I think that would be the best thing to say to him. I don't know if that would help, really. That's the other thing, I suppose, because you kind of look back and you go, all the reasons things happen is where you get to now, I suppose, isn't it? But yeah, it'll get better. And yeah, what else? It's a really interesting question, that. What else would I say? Not it'll get better, you'll be happier than this one day, I think I would say. You'll be happier than this. That would be better, I think. Yeah.
And the final question. When was the last time you said, I love you, or gave your brother or your dad a hug?
Genuinely, every time I'm on the phone, I say I love you now at the end. I never used to. I feel like I made that decision after my grandparents died, that I'll never not say I love you to my family at the end of a phone call ever again. I don't think I did when my granddad was awkward. That's the thing I realised. My granddad was awkward with the love yous. My grand was fine. Granddad's like, on the end of the phone, he would hate it. He would try not say it. He'd go, I love you. Hi, there you go. See you later. And yeah, I feel like, every time I say I love you now, whether they like it or not.
How does your dad respond?
Whether they like it or not. Good. I think my dad probably had his own things to deal with in his life, and I think he's just a happier guy now, and I think he understands who I am, a lot more than he probably would have when I was a kid, I would think. But he knows that I'm like this. I'm more emotional, and I'm fine with that. I never used to be, but I'm fine with that now. I'm emotional, and I don't care. Like, I'll say love you if I want to say love you, and it's more for me than them, probably, in a sense, so that I know I've always at least done my part on it. But they're fine with it. My brother always says that out of the two of us. He always told me that. He says, you always wear your heart on your sleeve, and he's fine with it.
Joe McTernan, you've been an excellent guest on The Hurt Locker.
Thank you, Yanka. I appreciate that, man. That was interesting. Yeah.
I always wonder what you mean when people say that was interesting. Because they don't blow it up and don't say, oh, that was magnificent, blah, 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 blah. But when you say that was interesting.
Would you like me to say that and then we can cut it?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Just interesting. Yeah, no, well, you never know. I suppose it's just quite direct questions that you don't know if you would be happy answering in life, but then you actually kind of are when someone just asks,
It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Sheridan.
Of course.
And it's a wrap.
Thank you for watching. Remember, you are not alone. If you or someone you care about is struggling with their mental health, please see the contact information in this episode's description for further support.